Best of July! Best of July, right? Retail, crowdfunding, played. What is out there? Why did it make waves? And you know what? It's kind of a misnomer at the beginning of this, because this really isn't the best of July. It's the stuff that we need to talk about from July, including my best of July, if you will. Because as you know, if you tune in on these videos when I monthly recap, it's not always thumbs up that I'm giving some of these crowdfunding projects, especially, or even some of the games I played, because you know, you try and play stuff you like, but sometimes swing and a miss. Let's freaking go. So where do we stand in crowdfunding in July? Truth be told, July was kind of a little bit of a downturn in terms of overall crowdfunding. I got to test play Sail Legacy, which was an interesting conundrum from a two-player Legacy-style trick-taking game. It was a hell of a lot more expensive than I was expecting it to do on the crowdfunding side of things, because you're deluxifying, blingifying the hell out of this thing. And I guess that's okay, because that's what's getting people to back on crowdfunding nowadays, right? That is the freaking incentive in the first place. And you want missions galore. Now, I will give them some credit here, because All Play has quite the variety of actual dynamics on the board as you're maneuvering your ship. It layers it on very nicely. I was very impressed with the rule book in terms of learning this, because it reminded me in a weird way, in the same vibe of something like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, where it literally just lays it out. Okay, this round you're going to do this. This round you're going to do this. This scenario you're going to add this. This scenario you're going to add this. This is how it works. And it was better than some of the retail rulebooks I've seen lately as well. So I just have to throw that out there, because I see that and I talk about it all the time on crowdfunding, where I go, okay, did somebody read this book? I've seen 2 rule books in my house within the last week of me filming this, where I said, this is a clear example of a game that, although it is clearly well put together, the rule book is significantly lacking. Someone completely unfamiliar with the game clearly never picked this up and tried to learn it, because otherwise you would have saw edge case, not clearly explained where this is coming from, not clearly explained what exactly going on. And again, it's not like huge things, right? It's like literally you could add 1 or 2 sentences. It's not even a large amount that needs to be added, but it's just that, oh my gosh. Again, like, I should do this as a side job in terms of the channel. You know, maybe they'll add that to my media kit of just reading rulebooks. My mother was a freaking 8th grade English teacher. My kid had, in the last year in 5th grade, had this 10-page project. It took me like 45 minutes to get through it, because I was freaking writing stuff left and right, reword this, change this, paragraph here, run on that, you know, and he was like, Dad, this is Dad. My wife was like, what are you doing? Anyway. But yeah, I'll add that to my media kit and we'll call that good. But I really enjoyed Sail Legacy from that. Is it a forever game for me? You know, again, it's still a very, very niche genre of trick-taking, cooperative, and 2-player. And that Venn diagram, which is why the funding that it got was really impressive. Clank frickin' Catacombs, the Underworld expansion. It was kind of a wash when I looked at the actual pricing of this versus what the expansion and the core base game were at retail versus the crowdfunding side of things. And I don't say that as a bad thing. I just say that as a, right? And although you may not like the over deluxified blingification, like I just said, with something even like Sail Legacy, you also have to give kudos where kudos is due, because otherwise, if you turn around and tell me I don't have a whole lot of incentive, or it's only $5 or $10 difference and same gameplay content, right? Like with the shipping unknown nowadays and the tariff situation, I'll just pass and wait, especially when it's a second expansion for a base game that I'm not sure if this is going to be better than the first expansion or worse than the first expansion, because that's the problem with second expansions, right? Are they both equally compatible? Do I end up liking one more than the other? Or is it a wash? Or you go, yeah, you know, I think of Space Base as my prototypical one. I do not like the Space Pluto expansion. Pluto, Space, whatever it is. I do love Space Base Genesis. And similarly, Isle of Skye had the same thing happen. Druid expansion, we just pretend like it doesn't even exist. But that's what I wonder with this. And so with an expansion, if you are truly beloved of this game per the Kickstarter page, then maybe you should just be auto buying this. But again, the auto buy, do you support Direwolf at retail? Do you support them on crowdfunding? Either way, though, for an expansion-driven, content-driven campaign, $500,000 is freaking amazing. And that's how strong the lines of Direwolf and their just standard of quality have become and are synonymous with at this point. I think that's a pure reflection of that. My sleeper hit of the month of July, though, was one that I barely remembered covering the first time around, but actually added it to my wish list now the second time around with a second iteration of the Flip series. And I mean that by Flip Town and now Flip Voyage. Flip Voyage looks absolutely fantastic to me. It gives me vibes of River Rats from earlier in the year. Just a small publisher game. Stephen Aramini is giving us something interesting from the designer of Sprawlopolis, Circle the Wagons, you know, that sort of thing. I love the idea of this poker style roll and write, if you will, in the sense that get cards, use those cards in the various ways like you would with dice. You know, you get 3 dice, you choose one for this, one for this, one for this, and you do the same thing with a card-driven aspect. And now you're doing it underwater, assigning locations, science, warfare, adventure, all of the upgrades or repairs that are necessary. So I think this absolutely looks like something outstanding. And for it not even to be done somehow, it's been going for like a super long campaign month, but $100,000 for this campaign, which is insane considering the Flip print and play is $5 and the actual game itself goes for $27 or $29 if you want the new Frontier expansion or even just Flip Voyage to, I mean, that price. Now, I'd make the argument that it's probably a price point issue. So if you want to save $5 or $10, you get it at retail. But again, like where you choose to back your indie side of things, this is one of those that you should at least, well, think about. Then, you know what? I'm really surprised because I love this company off the page, right? I talked about Grendel, the game of crime and mayhem. I think this is probably my favorite game of theirs, and I don't say that lightly. I say that as someone who has mind management sitting right up there out of camera sight and can't get that played. And Discovery, you know, the cores of Discovery is a fine sort of asymmetric cooperative minesweeper style game. And their previous one, Harrow County, is like a 2-player asymmetric, heavier to learn route. But this one is actually, like it says, highly approachable. 4 factions, not terribly difficult to learn at all. Asymmetric, but not like you have to balance people like route meta style, if you will, either. So I think it's worthwhile as just an easier entry point into this something. And I would say that this is very much reminiscent in the same way of Cores of Discovery by people looking at it and not willing to back it. And Cores of Discovery has been selling like hotcakes on the secondary market because I monitor these things, you know, intermittently on Board Game Geek as well as Facebook and Reddit. And that is one that with the deluxifications and the extra content is just, you know, actually going for higher than the pledge level price. And I think that just goes to show what Off the Page has done, because that is not always or usually even the case now more recently with a lot of games that show up on the secondary market from a crowdfunding side of things. So kudos where kudos is freaking due. Then Teburu the Dungeon, Sword and Sorcery again. And it's got, I mean, the $750,000, which is fantastic for essentially getting some new stuff, but also buying some old stuff and incorporating it with this Teburu system. I have no clue what to make of Teburu, right? Like, I said this previously when I covered it on my crowdfunding roundup, that if I'm buying a board game, I want the physical board game. And I like the fact that it gets rid of some of the minutia. I just worry like it's more gimmick than you know, long-term practicality for me. And if I'm going to buy something like this, I'm going to go buy a Switch 2. I'm going to go buy a Switch 2 because I want my little bit of physical. Although, again, you know, I would be lying. I would be lying to your face if I didn't say not having to manage all of the crap sometimes that comes with a Frosthaven, a Madara, anything along that lines of Aeon's End, right? Like, I love these type of games, but at the same time, to not have to manually keep track of all of the equipment and the upkeep of this and that and boom area and bam area, sort of like why I think sometimes people like Return to Dark Tower, right? It does some of that for you. And there's something that can't be understated about that. I guess I just look at this and I go, is this how I would want it to be executed in the first place? And that's where I go, I don't know. And then what do you do if you don't know? As I always say, if you don't know, you pass on it. And that's always okay, no FOMO zone. The other under the radar sleeper hit that we have to talk about, and I had to apologize to Kyle because I just couldn't fit it in and I was an idiot and I didn't follow up quickly enough in emails. But Echoes of the Sundering, I just think it's one to keep on your radar that has flew past a lot of people as sort of the dungeon crawl world campaign situation without the miniatures, right? Open world, deck construction, cooperative. And so if you can streamline that with a lot less of the upkeep stuff that I was just talking about, but keep some of the gameplay with a 40-hour campaign, 40 hours is a hell of a lot more than you need, right? Because I guarantee if you're looking at anything like this, you're telling me, Chris, it doesn't have enough replayability. You have 6 of these other games. You know, you don't do that with video games. You don't go, video games, I can only play it for 50 hours, so I'm just not even going to buy it in the first place. It has to have 100 plus or bust. No, you don't do that on that side of things. You shouldn't do it on this side of things. But yeah, we see that. And I like the idea of a drop-in, drop-out system, making it easier to get to the table. A roguelike mode if you don't want to do campaign, which has something interesting. I like the artwork. I think it's going to be one to really watch when it delivers. Oh man, Echoes. Man, it says 2027 on this. So 2 years out, holy crap. But I guess hit the Reddit remind me button in 2 years and we'll see where things are at. Okay, we've talked about crowdfunding. Now, let's talk about my best of the month. And 8 new games we have to talk about. And this is going to be in no particular order, not to bait you with anything in particular, but let's just do them alphabetically this month, just to screw with things like I do on my channel, because otherwise I hate this sometimes 10-to-1 mystery crap. Ooh, no! I almost always label the video timestamps down below anyway, so it's not like it's a huge mystery on my videos, because that is one of my pet peeves overall. Not looking at anyone in particular, but again, just in general, right? Okay, so number 1, alphabetically speaking, it is right down here next to me. Where is it? Oh, right here. Castle Raisers from WWBG. I'm actually really interested in their upcoming game as well, Last Lantern. It was on my Gen Con preview list. But this is like Three Little Pigs versus the Wolf. It's a very intriguing game. I'm going to be having a full review out on it in the next week or 2 as well, just to illuminate things. It's basically an abstract strategy tile placement game, Three Little Pigs versus the Wolf. It's a big old draft your pieces, place them down, combo chain by overlaying spots on your individual castle to get abilities to recruit villagers and trigger everything along the way to get the most victory points before the end. Each individual player's castle kind of has your own forest, farmlands, and sea area where you're going to be placing the tiles. You set up your stuff, you pour some cauldrons on some wolves, they fire some archers back at you. You do that 3 rounds as you're drafting and comboing along the way. Truth be told, the rule book and the iconography is probably the biggest barrier to this one as a whole, because it's a little bit hard to explain and to learn just straight from the rule book. But thankfully, my bro over at Cardboard East has you covered if you're really interested in this one. I think this one could be a hidden gem of the year, but I need to play it a couple more times to see kind of how I feel after more repeated play with that mechanistic approach. But all in all, this was just the start of an awesome freaking month of new games, truth be told. The next one up, I did it on that stupid teaser video of the best one you can't buy in America, Conic. It's the Nizia game that you can't get over America. I imported it from Japanese version of Amazon, and I love it. We have played it nearly a dozen times at this point. My 4-year-old can play it. He doesn't know what he's doing. He can't use the 0 tile properly, but I'll tell you, when that 1 beats that 10, or he plays the 10 to our 9s, his cackle is the most joyous thing in the whole sound of the board gaming scene. It is why I play the games, to absolutely have fun. Truth be told, I still usually win. This is the one game I have found that I am actually good at. Anyway, but it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you have anything like my taste, this press your luck, lose your bid if you don't win style of things with the slightly different, just dynamic endgame scoring is a hell of a lot of fun. Going back to WWBG, though, they sent me their other 2-player card game called Lone Wolves, which I also played new this past month. Again, I've said this with several other games. I have discovered some real gems this year from not 2025. This is now a 2024, but like Bomb Busters, which I talked about last month, if I had played Lone Wolves in 2024, this probably would be in my top 15 games of the year. This is a tremendous game. This 2-player, weird trick-taking style of area control with variable powers. Like, if you win a Battle Line Medieval-esque vibe, you win your trick as you play down against your opponent at the beginning of the game. There actually isn't trump, though. You keep your card face up, it scores that many points to win the area at the end. However, if you don't win, you turn it face down, and you get to choose a power from the center to mitigate. And truth be told, this is one of those games, kind of like a Brian Boru, where sometimes you want to lose the trick because you want the power, which plays into the long-term strategy. I'm going to lose the battle, but I'm going to win the war. And it plays snappy, it plays quick, it's got enough asymmetric, it's got enough dynamic, and it's just, again, I think I'm becoming a card game family this year. Card games for us have just been tremendous in terms of getting the family involved, the kids super interested. Like, everything we play, they're like, this is great. So easily would have been on that list. And I always feel weird, again, like with Bomb Busters, right? When I do my end of the year list, this is probably going to be 2 separate lists now. The best of new games 2025 and the best games not from 2025, because I can put things like Lone Wolves and Bomb Busters and something else I played in August on there as well. Spoilers! So then we're talking Sail Legacy. Again, this was a prototype. This is a crowdfunding situation. And I think this is bringing something different and special, staying with somehow, alphabetically, the line of 2-player trick takers. But this is harder. It's thinkier. It's more complex. It's better than Sail. It's going to cost you about 5 times as much as Sail. So you better love it. The big concept of this 2-player trick taking, only win so many tricks on one side before the mission, completes style of things is actually, it's just very solid mechanically. What if this, or I wonder if that, no, there's none of that for a prototype. So I give kudos to them. It's just whether or not this is your thing, because it doesn't sail far away from the original Sail in terms of the actual. So if you didn't like the first one, this one has absolutely zero appeal for you now the second time around whatsoever. So just be aware of it. Then silver coin, the Bezier golf situation where you're trading, swapping cards, doing some take that and trying to get the lowest sum total of things. I looked at this, I read it, I looked at the actual gameplay and I said, oh yeah, my thinkers are going to really like this. And we played it once and I was like, I don't know. It just seemed a little convoluted and I need to give it more of a chance. And I think my 11-year-old liked it, but it just left me feeling kind of blah overall. Blasé, if you will. Very mush, if you like that phrase. So it wasn't bad, but when I'm playing all of these other card-based games that I am just absolutely enthralled with, it's just like having plain rice at dinner, right? It's fine, but I'd rather have chicken fried rice. Or I'd rather have something else in place of it. So, although, my 11-year-old loves just plain white rice. Children, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Then, again, this was the month of S's, I guess, 3 in a row. Spooktacular. Okay, if you missed my review of Spooktacular, I'll just give you the too lazy, didn't watch version of things, right? Spooktacular is going to be on my top 10 games of the year. Level 99 has knocked it out of the park with this for a light, but ultimately incredibly tactical, hugely asymmetric, incredibly streamlined. You know what you're getting into mechanistic approach while making it a unique, fun experience that is easily one of the most enjoyable of the year for me. not having even played half of the monster characters, as you're going through rooms, chasing out meeples, taking other people's meeples, using meeples to activate your abilities, having your own unique playmat about how your action turns are both the same and completely different, utilizing the same mechanism approach that your opponents are doing. You don't have to play a meta sting. You don't have to worry about completely balancing. It's just a freaking hell of a lot of fun. Highly, hugely recommend that. I mean, again, I'm filming this in the middle of August, and I'm telling you right now, this will be, no matter what, on that list. And if it's not, you can shoot me an email and say, Chris, you owe me a Twizzler, and you said that in this video it was going to be on your top 10, and now it's not. You can do that if you so choose. I don't know why I went with Twizzler. It was the first thing that came out of my mouth there. Then, Vicious Gardens. And this is my 2025 version of Courtesans, if you will. A game that on the surface shouldn't be as intriguing as it is. Again, it's not balanced well. I don't think all of the expansions I want to play with. Some of the expansions don't work well at higher player counts. My favorite expansion doesn't work well at the highest player counts, which is disappointing. At the same time, the intriguing concept of it as a whole, of just literally playing your cards down in front of you and having these like visitors or, you know, garden folks specialists that do some take that manipulation. It's just fun take that. It's just fun take that, like Courtesans is. And I can't really describe it much better or more succinct than that, but you kind of know it when you see it. Like, we played it with 6 people for the first time. And you're going, okay, 6 people playing a game for the first time, going around the table. This looks like a cluster F waiting to happen. And it was a little bit for the first round or two. And the kids definitely needed some, hey, hurry up, it's your turn. Actually pay attention, right? Like ADHD, what? So that was the issue. But once it got like, it's smooth. It works. It flows. Again, like, I wish the Weeds expansion had more cards in it so you could actually make the Weeds a viable strategy at the higher player counts, for example. I don't think the negative victory point conditions are a good inclusion in the game as a whole, because you can't tell what the victory point thing is when it's flipped over to just its victory point side of what you need to play in order to grab it from your garden in the first place. I like having to sacrifice your garden, which is the thing that you use, your individual cards, your tableau, essentially, to get those victory points. But if you want to actually play your specialist, which give you the special powers and more take that and more interaction, then you actually have to sacrifice from that same thing. And so you have to decide when and when and when. And you go round and round and round and round and round. And it's only like first one to like 3 cards, and then you score up all the points and it works. So it's both better and, you know, slightly, oh, wow, this could have been just that much more as well, too. So, you know, intriguing to see where they could go with it. And last but not least, again, slightly before this or slightly after this, depending on how I do this, separate review of Wroth. Chip Theory sent me Wroth. And where is Wroth? Wroth is right there. Wroth is right there. See, proof that I have Wroth. They sent it to me, like I said, and it is, and again, I will expound more on this in my video, or will have expounded more on it in the video, of saying this is a 60-minute or less area control war style game. If that is what you're looking for, this sets out and achieves it. The rule book needs a little bit work on some of the edge case and the asymmetry, but it is both similar and different to Root in the sense that there is a heavy amount of asymmetry. I'm not sure everything is balanced. I'm not sure I care if everything is balanced when I'm playing at that under time frame. But with the cost point and the time frame, I hear you guys in the comment section all the time about saying, well, it needs to be this long if I'm going to pay this much. And then I hear other people saying, well, as long as I can get it played, I don't care what the cost is, right? Like, what side of that do you fall on? Because this definitely falls on the side of, if you want to have a shorter game that costs less, this is not that. But it encapsulates some of the good qualities of that combination as well. It is not a Root in the sense that, like I mentioned, the balance, the meta, all of that stuff. It is a Root in the sense that you got to kind of know what other people's powers are. Otherwise, you're going to get caught very flat-footed. It is also not your typical area control game where you are just smashing people out of areas. You're doing very little damage with a lot of troop movement on the map. It gets very crowded very quickly. I don't think the board setup in terms of how they design the areas is that easy to kind of tell what's going on. And again, it leads back to a few of the rulebook issues that, you know, again, aren't massively make it or break it. When you go over to the Board Game Geek comment section, And more than a handful of comments are all talking about that. You know, again, it speaks to a little bit more refinement there would probably be nice, kind of like a Castle Raisers in that sense. So, like I mentioned, pros and cons, I think it's good for what it is. Is it going to be outstanding, your best area control war game-ish on a map? No. But if you want something very accessible and very easy to understand and not having this thick of a rule book, it, again, accomplishes everything that it's going out for. Because, again, I think it suffers from a root perception situation where what people wanted and what it actually is are not the same. And that's the month of July for me. Let me know what you think. Comments, questions, concerns down below. What was your best? And what else should I have on my radar? I've got a couple surprises coming up in the August videos as well. So some very good surprises. Again, very good. You'll be pleased. I am pleased. Have a great freaking day. Peace out. See you later.